Welcome in, everybody. RFK Refugees Podcast. Ted here. John here. This is going to be a tough show, everybody. I think we're just going to go ahead and get it out of the way for half the show. The other half's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be, it's going to encourage you. Maybe you should give the men's side a little break. Take a little hiatus for a little bit. Maybe it'll get better. We don't know. Maybe it'll get better. And then maybe just go and watch the Washington Spirit, or go watch the DC Power. I don't know. Who knows? They got like 2 players on the roster at this point, but it'll be coached by Fred Brilliant. So anyway, John. Anyway, John, how you doing, my friend? Hope you're doing well.
Oh, just great, man. I'm just ready for the most positive show that we've ever done. Yeah, no, I think it's gonna be good. I think this is like one of the rare situations where we're not. I don't know. I don't want to say that. I was going to say this is one of those situations where like the commenters who are Sky is Falling are going to have a little bit more quarter from us than usual. But I think there's a very specific brand of Sky is Falling that we're going to probably spend a lot of time on tonight.
Yeah.
So that maybe not. I want to pull back on that.
Yes.
But how was my weekend?
Or your holiday week, I should say.
Oh,
this
yeah.
was
No, that's true. It was a longer bit of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. Spent some time with family, swam a lot, did a lot of swimming. My 4-year-old is obsessed with swimming right now, so all I do is swim. And that's pretty fun. I got sunburned a lot. I played baseball on Sunday with a team that is mostly, at least half of them are like 20 years old, which you would think would make me feel old, but actually made me feel young because I knew the lingo, so I could blend in. I was like a undercover Gen Zer.
Nice.
Not even close. How about yours?
Mine was very good, actually. I got to experience joy in soccer, which soccer has not been bringing me a whole lot of joy.
Yeah, you did.
Sans the Washington Spirit, but the men's side of soccer between the U.S. men's national team, DC United, of course, hasn't been a whole lot of joy over this past month. And finally had a men's soccer team that gave me joy. Went to the illustrious Henny Derby between Forward Madison and Richmond Kickers, and it was a awesome experience. Got to see a lot of people I haven't had the opportunity to see. It was the first game I've been to this year. I would say just go watch the highlights. It was a dramatic 2-1 victory. Got to see Emiliano Tarzaghi, who of course is a legend in Richmond Kickers territory, who's been injured and not really playing 100%. He scored in front of Section O, which was cool. And then there was a dramatic last second header to win the game, and got to celebrate the Henny Derby Trophy. There were fans from Madison who brought it over, so it was quite a joyous experience. I don't think my voice still has recovered. I was yelling so much. So soccer can be fun, guys. There is a light. There is a light at the other end of the tunnel. So.
Or it's a train.
Or it's a train. Oh, let's get into it. Let's talk the bad. DC United. Train. Let's talk the train, which is maybe gonna the metro line that's gonna hit us right now as we're exiting the tunnel.
The purple line.
DC United 5-0 losers. 5-0 losers to Orlando. I want to spend like as little. I feel like there's not a whole lot. I mean, you can't really break down good, bad. It's all bad. Maybe, okay, let's say Patola looked like maybe the most decent of the players out there. He was at least active. He was at least looked like he was maybe the only one who was really like trying throughout that entire game. And this looks like a team that is running on empty, running out of gas. They literally were down so quick. They were second best in this game from the whistle, and there was really no coming back. And the only thing like you really could have done in this situation is just try not to get a player sent off. And what happens is, as Lucas Bartlett says, I'm going to go take a break for a little bit. So
he said, "Where are we the deepest right now on this roster?" I know my position.
I mean, they just got Akamboni and Garrison Tubbs back, so maybe that's true compared to everybody else on the roster.
Could be true.
Yeah. I mean, anything you want to add to this, Sean? Anything you want to say? Other than just how bad it was.
Garrison Tubbs looked really, really poor to me today. He looked as good as he looked bad, or he looked as bad as he's looked good prior to his concussion. I'll save the Tyler Miller discussion for a little bit later. Very funny to me that Hayden Sargis comes in and then 30 seconds later gets a yellow card. And the announcer was like, that's what you want. That's what you want your substitutes to come in to. I was like, I don't think it is. I don't think it is after all the red cards we've gotten. And then, again, funny that, in the course of 2 weeks, Jeremy Garay and Hayden Sargis come back and are instantly getting minutes. And before, we're like, we don't know if it's good for their development. They're getting more minutes for DC United than they were for their USL clubs. So that says a lot of things. But center back situation continues to be a problem. Now we've down one more. Matai will come back. That's fine. Christopher McVeigh looked like a guy coming off of a very, very long layoff. Played very much like it. And I don't know what else to say. They were awful. It didn't get any better. They could have lost by more than this.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very possibly.
Yeah.
Go ahead. If they were more clinical, I think that would have been 7-0.
Yeah. Tyler Miller, I think, had another poor showing. Not, certainly not good enough. I mean, just the third goal is what I go back to. I'm not going to say that's entirely his fault, but just watching the Slima replay and you can tell the difference between when he's seeing that and when he reacts to it. And he reacts half a second slower, which isn't a lot, but it's like an F1 car going half a second slower. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it is a lot, and it makes the difference in those types of situations. So, I think his confidence is shot after the Cincy game. I think he is, I think the biggest thing we learned from this game, I think there were certain players, maybe other than the ones that have come in this year, there were certain players like Martin Rodriguez, that, Tyler Miller were let's see what they bring, maybe, Tyler Miller had some, decent saves against New York. And maybe it's hey, maybe these guys, we do want to get these guys back. So maybe we want to, give another year for these players. And I think we come away from this game thinking, nope, that's not good enough. And this is not what you want to see. Martin Rodriguez in particular. I mean, I thought, hey, I was when Mateus Click went down, I was like, hey man, here's your moment. Here's your moment to step up and to deliver. And I don't know if he was the poorest player out there, but he certainly didn't deliver. And I think it further emphasizes that, maybe he is good as a situational type player. If you get the right people around him, maybe he can flourish a little bit. But then once you kind of throw him out there on his own and have him be the man, he's not going to be the man. And it just shows that the roster, the players that, some of the players that have brought in, we look at Patola, being one of the better showers. That's good for the future in that, he's a player that we've given a lot of money to and maybe we haven't seen a whole lot from. So it was bad. It was bad all around from this team. I think any sort of confidence you could have had, coming out of New York, coming out of Cincy, where again, they were a bad keeper mistake, away from maybe picking up a point in that game in a tough situation, and then just go out and just kind of lay an egg, like you did against Orlando. I think maybe, subbing on Garea, subbing on Sargis, I think is maybe an indication that, Lassane knows maybe the season is spiraling out of control. Maybe there's Leagues Cup, maybe just see what you got and you just kind of just hunker down and get through the season and prepare for 2025. I thought I look on could they go on a run and make the playoffs? Sure. But I don't see it happening.
How far would they get if they did? I think that's another question. Let's talk about Troy.
Yeah.
I think there has been a lot of discussion on Twitter, on Discords, and our questions that we receive from listeners about Troy. Should Troy be out? What do we need to see to be excited about Troy? There's this long, is it 9 games without a win? 10 games without a win? 11 games. They're basically just saying this is unsatisfactory and, they've got to make a change. They can't just let things be this way. We have talked all season long about how the fact that this is a rebuilding year, it has to be a rebuilding year. The salary cap makes it so that excuse clearly does not buy with some people.
Mm-hmm.
I think I saw somebody say it's easy in MLS to go from worst to first, which I thought was one of the funnier things that I've seen talking about this. It absolutely is not easy, and it certainly doesn't happen in one season, and it certainly doesn't happen making no major acquisitions in the off season. But let's just talk about it. I guess we agree. So it's kind of hard to skewer this, but how clearly how do we convince someone that thinks that this needs to happen right away?
I would just go about, think about the message, and maybe this doesn't fly, but I mean, just think about the message it sends, to let Troy Lesesne go, and just think about, it's not his fault. He's playing games with 14 players in certain situations, playing 3 games a week. I think in nature, I'm going to say the effort wasn't there, and we didn't. And other thing we should note, unfortunately I didn't listen to the post game press conference.
Oh, it was 2 minutes long.
Yeah, maybe it was.
It was. I listened to it. It was 2 minutes long.
I'd be very curious to see the questions asked, because, and this is sort of, Stephen Goff did not have any sort of story on this team. Now, he is covering Copa, he is covering a bunch of things, but the Post couldn't even be bothered to pay a dude to sit and watch it on TV, show up to the press conference, ask him questions, write a report. Turns
out they were right to do that. Turns out they made a gamble, and they got hit 21 on that one.
Yeah. It's so I guess back to your point on Troy. Again, even if I was Ali Mackay and I had a crystal ball that said, that showed me in 2025, this will not work out. I don't know if you even make that. I don't know if you even make that decision then, because you have brought in a new GM, you've brought in a new coach, you have given him basically, some good players to work with. Benteke is a good player, Click's a good player, but sort of beyond that, it's a lot of young kids like Ted Gudi-Pietro, like Jacob Murrell, like Akambone, guys who we hope will be good maybe in the future. Even Ted, I wouldn't put it past them to, have a turnaround next year, or even, later in this year. And then surrounding him is a lot of really bad Band-Aids that have torn off and are, exposing a wound, which is this team has 0 depth. And, you don't have a next pro team to fill bodies, to maybe sub out some of these guys and rest some of these guys in certain situations. You kind of have to let them play. So I think, fatigue is playing a role in this, and I think it would happen regardless of whatever system.
I think one thing that you should ask yourself is if ownership was to say, this is unsatisfactory, everyone's fired, the GM's fired, the coach is fired, who do you think would come into this mess? Who do you think would take this job? The last place team in MLS with a salary cap constrained environment where the owners are saying that I have such a short fuse now all of a sudden after having a high tolerance for mediocrity for a long, long time. Who's going to come into that and think that they can turn this around? Nobody. This ship is underwater right now, and there's no one that's going to be able to bail it out. So that's something to think about.
Yeah, and what now? Maybe a GM comes in and says, "Well, hey, I won't get the blame for the rest of this," and then next year. But I mean, also then you realize that the short fuse is there. You haven't. McKay got barely any time to build it. You also he started the rebuild with players that you might not want to rebuild with. Like, why would you do it? And so that's that. I think you hit the nail on the head, John. It's like, maybe 3 years down the road, we'll say McKay was a mistake. But right now we have no way of knowing whether this is going to be whether this is a mistake or not. I would say, early returns on his player and talent evaluation, his ability to move in the MLS market, I think are so far pretty good. And his ability to really navigate a tough situation and still find players that, I think if they find a guy who can be better than Jared Stroud out on that right side, then Jared Stroud becomes a guy you can bring in off the bench to contribute 4 or 5 goals a year, like 6, 7 goals a year off the bench, or a few assists too.
I think the only thing you could look at Mackay as making a mistake is not filling the other under 22 spots prior to the season. Do remember he did not have an entire winter. He was brought in, I believe, in February, I think was when he took the job. Maybe it was January, but it was still when it was cold out. I do remember that. So I think that's the only thing you look at the saying is saying, oh, well, there was some slots that salary would allow us to do that. But other than that, the other avenue I want to run this down, is that there's a lot of people talking about ownership and how cheap ownership is and how ownership needs to change. We've talked a lot over the last couple of years about that, about what we think about ownership. I don't think it's a surprise. If you want to go into our archives, you can find it. We have complaints, but also this is the time when they've been the least cheap. This is the time they've been the most open to spending money on transfer fees. We're hearing rumors about that. The question you need to look at this team. So they said, all right, we're going to hire a new GM. We're going to let him hire his own coach. The salary cap situation is a situation. If they wanted to spend money, there's nowhere to throw it at this exact moment, except for those under 22 spots, which they still might fill. There is just it's just a situation where there's not much can be done. There's just very, very little that can be done at the moment. And I think that ownership, you should judge them by what they do with the designated player positions after this year.
Yep.
Do they keep these two players? That might be the more cost-effective mode, or if they're able to buy them down, whatever that is. If they go out and spend money in the open market for that third DP, or they decided to go a different direction on Click or Benteke and go out and spend, that's where the money comes from, right? They're spending off the field. They're trying to spend off the field. They're theoretically going to have an ex-pro team at some point. That's another problem. But yeah. I think that line of argument is not as effective with me as it was 4 years ago when they were trying to throw the Band-Aids of Wayne Rooney as a player and as a coach to fix something and do nothing else. That was the owner being cheap. That was the owner throwing money at a problem without any sort of plan or strategy. This is something different. This is something you have to have a patient. To your point, it's about those 3 years. The coach and the GM are linked. Give them time. We've been bad so long. What is another 3 years realistically? Unless you're a season ticket holder, in which we would say, don't be. And then you're really just saying,
yeah, you have to, and I feel for fans. I found it funny. I feel like everybody was giving me like a different time frame for how bad we've been. Like some people were saying 10 years, some people were saying 8 years. Like it's just been such a malaise with this team for so long. And, honestly, that is on ownership. That is on ownership for, there have been times, go back and listen to the archives. I think there were times I thought 2019, they need to, Wayne Rooney's leaving. You know what? It's time to cut bait with Ben Olsen. I think maybe then you give Dave Casper an opportunity to hire a new coach. Then you try that and see if you can find somebody in here, or maybe bring in a guy who can go out and do something, who can be that sort of personality. And they didn't, and they went with Ben again. They selected the next DP, which was Edison Flores, which at the time was like the most money they'd ever spent on a transfer fee, most money they'd ever spent on getting a player in there, and he was terrible. And then I think you're stuck then with Edison. So it's been, I think this. What we're seeing right now is
the bill came due, right?
Cost
to your point.
of how this team has operated for so long, and that's on ownership. Yeah, and this is where I say, this is different. When this team, we talk about years where the team has been, horribly bad.
Post the Open Cup,
2020, 2022. I'm talking also post Open Cup. Post Audi Field. I segment those different realities for the team, different realities for everything, and different expectations. But you talk about those years; those were where the team literally tried to come out with a roster. And now I'll even throw 2023 in there. Tried to come out with a roster, tried to come out with players they thought could be good. They thought this team could be good. This team can go out and win. And they couldn't. This is a case where a GM has said, a lot of these players are not good enough. I'm gonna try to maneuver. I'm gonna try to I'm going to try to come in and maybe try to make some smart moves and try to bring in some guys. That's how we got Matty Patola, because he could cost less against the cap. We could bring him in. He's a player, maybe definitely not. People say, oh, he's a DP. He's a DP. I'm like, yeah, he's a DP because his salary is like $600,000, which is like $50,000 more than what it would cost him to be a salary player. And he can cost less against the cap. So we can get him in this year. And then next year, when we have more cap space, he won't be a DP anymore. This is about a conscious choice from the GM to say, you know what, it's no hope trying to have us be good this year. We're going to put a team out there. I think maybe, playoffs are always a possibility. Even with this team, I don't think the season might feel like it's done. But again, things could turn around very quickly. This is a GM that says, look, we're not going to win anything this year. There's no relegation. What's the point? I've got contracts that are going to be gone. I have certain players I want to get out, and we're just going to ride this out through the rest of the year. And then, I'm going to spend my year scouting, talking, getting guys in. And then, once we hit the winter, that's where big things are going to happen. That's, if you listen to Tom Bogart, that's what he says. He says, look, the winter is where this team is going to get it. They do not have a lot of cap space. And those are not all McKay's fault. That's not Troy's fault for how this team is built. So again, that's in my opinion, that's how you need to think about this. I'm not going to tell you that, hey, go buy season tickets. It's going to be better. I'm hopeful it'll be better. It might not be. This might be a symbol. And the only thing I'll also add is there are plenty of bad owners that can still go out and win. And Philadelphia Union, I think right now, I know it doesn't seem like it, but I think they're kind of my example where they made one good hire and they brought in a GM that at least gave them a direction and gave them a path forward. They brought in a good coach in Jim Curtin. And that entire team turned around. It's gone a little south because the ownership doesn't want to spend money and fans are turning against the ownership. That's sort of the case of that team was also stuck in a malaise where it was just average mediocrity. They got the right people in charge and they turned it around. It's not going well right now, but it is a team that still managed to go to an MLS Cup final to put themselves in a chance to win trophies. So I would argue what they're experiencing right now, I would trade that for what we're experiencing right now with DC any day of the week. So again, I protest the ownership. I'm not going to tell people not to say the ownership should sell, but I think also this case, maybe that there's some important backstory and, ability. No. Doesn't mean I think that, guarantee we're going to be, competing for an MLS Cup.
They've spent down
because we might not.
The other thing I was trying to remember, like you were talking about, Matty Botola is a DP and name only, basically. And I was like, I feel like we just did that. And when did we do that? And I look back, Victor Paulson was that. He was a DP for half of the season for the exact same reason, and then they moved him down. Same position even. So that's sort of what they need to do. And I think that's what they need to do. I was trying to look quickly through other teams if they had very strange designated players that shouldn't have been designated players. And I don't really see it. I think that's a unique problem due to our salary cap situation, where we spend so much money on mid roster players, too much money to get them in, where the only way we can fit them in is basically the salary cap exemption of a DP slot. So I don't know, just something that just.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, you talk about that. It is, Victor Paulson, Matty Botola. This is the very least we went with a younger player, a player that we think, is not a player at the end of his career like Victor Paulson was. And we're paying. I think we're still paying him significant. We're paying Matty significantly less than we're paying Paulson. So, I don't know. One question I have for you. Any opinions changed on Matthias Klick or Christian Benteke? Up or down?
I could go either way. Yeah, I think it depends on what the level of intent is if you replace them. I think it would somewhat set your project back a little bit. I think you'll always need a goal scorer. You'll always need a sort of a midfield metronome, which Klick is for you quite clearly after the Orlando game. Chance creating, ball controlling, smart on the ball. Yeah, doesn't get blown away at any point. And then I think there's some conversation around Benteke about is he more of a negative than a positive because of the type of style he plays? I don't think that that's the case. I think they're both players you want to keep around unless you're going to completely go in a different direction and spend a lot of money to do so.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a question of, does Mackay think that does he already have a better player in mind? Is he already scouting that player? Did he already have that player in mind maybe in the winter? But, player signings, and it's not something, video games and, Football Manager make you think, oh, you can scout a player and then immediately offer him a contract and get him to sign. It doesn't work like that in Roth. There's usually years sometimes that they start. First, they gauge interest. maybe the player's like, oh, I don't want to do that right now. Then you just kind of monitor them. There's a lot of work that goes into it. It takes a lot of time to sign good players. And usually, it very rarely does it ever kind of come together within a few months. Look at, try to think, I feel like there's been players where it's been like, they were monitoring for several years and they literally had conversations with them, and eventually it's like, okay, we want to make a move. So it takes a lot of time. So I think if he's ready to move on a couple players, he says, nope, these two guys are going to be better. I think you see them say, sign Art. And I think the interesting to watch is they have the choice to do that. So
other than questions, are there any related questions?
Do we have anything else? Anything else you want to add? I think we've kind of touched all of it. So. A couple of, I think we've answered some of them. Like PJ Cad says, how is the style play now different in a way that we should be optimistic versus years past? I'm not sure style of play is where you want to go with this question. I think it's more of an understanding of where this team is. This is not like the rest of the world. You have a salary cap, you have contracts that like you can't get out of. Some people I think were throwing out, they should sell Benteke or Click at their highest value. I'm like, they've got 6 months left on their contract. Yes, there's an option year. And if DC wanted, number one, no one's going to ask about them because then they don't want to say, oh, okay, what would you give us? All right, well, let's exercise that year contract. No one's going to do that. If they are interested, they might just wait. And
transfer
maybe DC will pass, and then you can pick them up for free.
$5 million.
You're not going to sell those two players. They're not at their peak value, by the way,
I think
either.
That's probably a little bit low, but
yeah. That's mostly. Yeah, but you're not going to sell those guys. Unless no, it's just not going to happen. I think as far as the answer to play style, I don't know if play style. I think you do look, if you want to talk about play style, look at how successful it was to start the year, and I feel like what you've seen in every game, you see it be really, really successful beginning of the year. And then, the injuries and everything like that, which I think when you look at certain other teams, I don't think the injuries are completely out of proportion. I mean, one injury is not even, to Russell Canals, which is a huge loss, is not even really really what you would classify as a play style related injury. So I think it's a nature of depth. It's a nature of, a lot of things. And I feel like as this team has had to play, they have 14 subs or they have 13 subs. They got away with it a little at the beginning of the year. You can get away with it sometimes too when you institute a style and you get it, and players get it right away and it's effective, and other teams are still trying to kind of figure it out. So, and now we're getting to the stage where teams now are basically have it figured out. A lot of them have more depth than we have. They're healthier. And I think you get situations where they'll punch above their weight, like against New York and Toronto.
Somewhat related.
And you have situations like where they get absolutely
earlier in the
smashed.
Season with mostly the same roster, we were making good teams look foolish for extended periods. Now almost every game brings a new low. What happened? Did teams just figure out our tactics? Did we run out of gas? How did we get this bad? I think we said it. I think injuries took a large part of this out. We were able to not rotate or not have to make a lot of changes for a time until you can't anymore. At a certain point, reality hits you in the face. I think the play style didn't change too much. I think there were some injury. I think, we were creating a left back by duct tape and baling wire and chewing gum. And then that didn't work anymore. So I think that's part of it. And then we became a little bit sort of one note because we only had one side of the field that was somewhat dangerous on the right side. Ted was injured. Wasn't really able to be what they thought he would be at the beginning of the season. Benteke was still able to score. He's still, in the top 4 for the Golden Boot, and he's been out for a couple games. So I think that's really what it is. I when you talk about play style and what you can be excited about, and what is sort of left to be look at, I think I would say look at once this team has an 18-man roster every week. And can sort of make decisions that are not based on like, oh crap, there's a guy in the USL that we could bring back and throw on the field. Mm-hmm. That would be a way that you can start to say, all right, I can start to judge the philosophy here a little bit better. I can judge play style a little bit better. It still won't be perfect because we don't have the freedom that the salary cap will provide. But at that point, at least it will not be literally an emergency situation every game trying to put a team together.
Yeah. And I think also, getting guys in that you don't have to play Click for 90 minutes every game. You can play him 70. You can play him 60. I think it also impacts how hard players want to go, knowing that there's no sub. So are they really going to? I think maybe that was a case in the Orlando game as well,
questions.
where it's like, look, I got to go the whole game. I can't be going 100%. So
says, despite what appears to be a long-term project with Sane, do you think he's now on a hot seat given the 11 to 12 games without a win? Not on the hot seat. I think if they go the rest of this season without a win, then there will be conversations in the off season. But he's here. He's here. He's not going anywhere.
I think what's going on right now is determining the leash he will have next year, or how much leash he will have next year. If this team goes the rest of the season without a win, I don't think that's going to happen.
I think I like that one. That's way better.
Blind nut finds way better. Squirrel, and also, the blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. Yeah. I think eventually, they'll stumble into a win. But I think it will create a situation where if this team enters next year, they have the freedom, they are able to be very active in the winter window, pick up players, get talent, where they can enter next year with what would be a more complete roster. They get a full off season with Troy, and things don't go well, or they start out slow. Then you start having that conversation about, do we want to make a move? Is this not really working out? So I think this is all about leash. I think he gave himself a really long leash at the beginning of the year, and he has burned up a lot of it because, again, I maybe unfair considering the roster, but I think it's also a case of, you got to also look at it. You look at what happened with Bradley Carnell, and his team was top of the table. Look what's been happening in NWSL. Teams are making decisions quicker. It's no longer a league where you can afford to be Ben Olsen anymore and to be bad. Those excuses dry up very quickly. So I don't think he's on the hot seat now, but I would say if things go slow next year, then I would say if this team finishes poorly, they're bottom of the table, wooden spoon for 2024, even especially with new players coming in and new talent. And then you enter next year and they start winless, let's say in March, then I think you could very well see Troy Sane be the first coach to go.
Question for DC United,
they will
when
bring in
does
somebody else.
End?
So
not soon enough, probably for most people and for some podcasters that would love a break from talking about this particular team.
Yeah. Well, we'll get a break. We'll hope, I don't know what although, I mean, again, I think their league scrap group is Atlanta and Santos, right? And Atlanta are like just fire sailing dudes. They just sold Caleb Wiley. They just sold. So, and I don't know.
What did they beat us last
think
time? They had just sold Giacomakis.
That team might
beat us.
Might start sinking really fast. Be interesting to see.
No.
Yep, and they beat us the goal on Thiago Mata scored like a worldie, and that was not a fun game to watch. That is going to be like that might be like the worst Leagues Cup game when Atlanta plays.
Also, when we looked at the beginning of the year, we're like, oh, we could use the Leagues Cup to really give an opportunity for some of these less used players to get minutes, and now we're like, Nathan Crockford, maybe who hasn't played, who doesn't have minutes.
We need some momentum.
I hope not.
I bet they get out. I will say this. I bet they get out of their Leagues Cup group. I bet I think they will. Atlanta has nobody. The window opens, but they've lost Thiago Mata, they've lost Giacomakis. They have, I guess, one DP left, I'm assuming. They're just selling Caleb Wiley, who's been one of their starters. Like, they are blowing through players fast. I don't think you're going to have enough time to get those players in. I think we'll get healthy, and I think we're going to get some actual talent in. We're going to have an actual fully fledged left back in there.
All right.
Assuming everybody stays healthy, I bet we make it out of our Leagues Cup group. I don't think it'll be pretty. I think it'll be like we win 1-0 against Atlanta, and then we get smoked by Santos, and Santos beats Atlanta and beats us, and we sneak in as that
coming in from
as that second place
right
team.
Now
but
from SC Lad 95.
So,
look at that. In an ideal world, one signing improves the roster and the season, what signing do you immediately make in the summer transfer window? I would first of all, once again, refer you to our website and the article that we did about different transfer targets. I think let's change the question a little bit, because I think naming players is not as important as necessarily naming position. What position would you do right now that would immediately make a difference on the roster? And where on the field do we need the most help immediately?
Are you asking me to be pie in the sky? Are you asking me to be realistic? Are you asking me to be... Wait, what are you asking me to do? Pie in the sky? A number 10. Like, that's what this team needs. This team needs a pure chance. Click is great, but he's great at the number 8. He's great at kind of being that guy who's going to ping the long ball, who's going to, be the presser, who's going to sort of do the dirty work while also being able to hit sort of the long pass. So where this team needs, it seems missing an elite number 10, Thiago Malda, Lucho Acosta.
Yeah. By the way, that was my answer for.
Realistically, second forward, maybe a U22 slot, and kind of either honestly, you know what I'll say? I'll say Jared Stroud's position, the right wing. I think you go out and you bring in some sort of attacker, U22 slot. You have an international slot available now. That's the other thing too about this team. You talked about filling those U22 slots. I'm like, with what international slot? Because it's probably where it comes from. Is those are going to be filled by international slots. The team didn't have it. They have one open right now. Baji has a green card, and Schnegg is taking Mohamed Yaz's spot. So basically the team and Pirani has a green card. I don't know if that's official yet, and that might, I guess how quickly that comes in.
Midfield, we'll see, or
but,
center back.
Once he has a green card,
I think
that opens up one more slot.
There's some spine problems that are going on right now. The depth is being challenged so much on the back line that you're looking at a 17-year-old and then a guy that Atlanta was putting in Atlanta United 2 all season last year as your starters, as potential starters on a week in, week out. I think you can get by, similar to how he said in the beginning of the season that you can get by for a while without rotation. You can get by for a while on youth and untested players. You cannot generally get by on all of them all the time. You can't fool all of the people all the time, basically, is what I'm trying to say. All right, let's evacuate DC United. Let's get into the other the more happier part of the show. Let's do it. Yes. So Washington Spirit go on the road. A late night.
Yes, let's do it.
They don't have a DCU after dark. Spirit after dark is not as resonant. But Spirit shake off their first loss in what felt like a million games to beat Bay FC handily 3-0 on the road. Jonah Heralda's first game on the sideline. I think, result never really much in doubt. We talked about it at the last show, sort of Bay has had a little bit of a resurgence, but I think if Andy Sullivan was playing and we had a normal showing from the Spirit, that it was going to be pretty much an easy walk. And what do you know? It was an easy walk. I haven't looked at the XG plot, but the first half, I believe, was probably the most dominant half they've played against an opponent all season long. We've got to talk about her, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, McKenna Morris, I think, being the standout from the game,
rookie to score this season.
Go ahead, you go first.
Someone brought it up on Twitter and didn't mention that it was a record. I've got to ask the folks, the comms folks at Spirit to run the numbers on that, because it feels like that's the case. But McKenna Morris is a player who I think had made 2 sub appearances previous to this. Had been battling an injury all sort of preseason and then in the first half of the year. But she was the entire offense or at least was the recipient of some opportunities there, and she did not miss. Scored the first goal off of a ball that Trinity Rodman played towards the frame and had a loose ball, won a penalty shortly after that Trinity then converted on. Just sort of I think I'm wondering how much this is a Jonah move about a player that he's seen in training and wanted to give an opportunity to. I think this team still is very unsettled in one of those winger spots, particularly till Lacey Santos gets here. Ashley Hatch, once again, not a starter, comes in at this time as a 9 substitute, which I think is where she needs to be for Ule Sarr. And I also got to make sure that I say Ule Sarr scores after I talked about how she hadn't scored in 6 games, or what I think 6 games. Scores one of the slower goals I think I've seen from far out. She puts the ball exactly in the side netting from almost the 18, just rolls it. and the keeper for BFC is unable to get a push and be able to knock that out. But Andy Sullivan returns. The midfield moves like a metronome. BFC overwhelmed at all times. Trinity Rodman is Trinity Rodman. Every single week she's Trinity Rodman. It becomes somewhat... It's a challenge to like not take her for granted. There's not a DC United player like that. There's not. I guess Mateus Klick is maybe the player who's like, and not even the case. He's more understated. Trinity Rodman is just so good all the time that it gets boring how good she is. Like it just, you don't even have to say it. Like, yes, she probably led the team in dribbles completed. Yes, she probably had the most chances created. Yes, she got on the score sheet once again. It's just it's wild. It's really kind of lucky for this team.
I feel like it's one of those players like you're not. I mean, this is like she's a player that I feel like was maybe a little bit unfairly talked about amongst U.S. women's national team fans. And maybe that's true. Maybe that wasn't the right fit. But you look at what she does on the field. You're not going to notice her. And I would say with all this attacking talent this team has, she's a little more absent, but when she's not there on the field, it's very clear. And I think those are players out there that do the dirty work. If you really understand the game and really understand what they bring, they go out there and they perform that work, and that makes it easier. And that frees up Hal Hirschfeld to sit in the box and ping a absolutely marvelous ball.
So
I think Altima McKenna Morris.
She scored the first goal.
I think that
she
helps draw the
and then she
PK, if I recall correctly.
So
like
she really was much of the offense this entire game.
Yeah, a very, very fortunate penalty call. I actually thought that was going to get called back because you can kind of see very clearly that McKenna Morris kind of trips on her own feet a little bit. Not sure there was much contact. I think the referee was really there could be contact.
Watching the replay,
I don't know.
Like,
I'll be curious to see what Pro has to say about that one.
But if I saw this without having a stake in it, I probably would have said she tripped herself.
Yeah. I think it's a case of the referee saw it and he's like, I don't see enough evidence. I don't have a good angle to see that there wasn't contact. And I live saw that and definitely thought there was contact. So
also,
I got to go with what I see. And so either way,
in a 3-0 game, you don't
good for the Spirit. I'd say either way, good for the Spirit.
The keeper, but Aubrey Kingsbury had a number of saves. They had 5 shots on goal. Spirit had 5 saves, obviously with a shutout, but there was she came out and smothered a couple opportunities that were not considered shots. She is so good at closing distance and making herself big. I feel like she's the best in the league. I don't see anybody else that really does it as well as she does. But it's just a really great way to go into this break. I was somewhat interested that Jonah Heraldez was not supposed to take control of the team until the game against Chivas on the 16th. And they changed course on that on Thursday before the game and said, just kidding, Jonah will be coaching on the sidelines. And I was curious if it was an overreaction from the loss or what it was. But, you can't argue with results on how this first went. The big call of McKenna Morris being put into the lineup for the first time, working that out so well. Certainly he has to be happy about that. I think it's funny that he said one of the big conversations, he's like, I came into Spirit because I wanted to suffer week in, week out. And then his first opponent is Bay FC, and then he throws a rookie on there who contributes all 3 of the goals. And they're never really sweating, really at all the games. So just couldn't have gone better for him and the whole club. I am very curious to see, is the pedal to the metal here in this summer series? They're off a week. They have a Players Association warranted and mandated break. They're all on vacation for a week, so great for them. That's cool. I think all the leagues should have like that, where they just shut down and like you're just go wherever just to take a break. Soccer could stop.
No, John. They should do Monday. They should do Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday for like a week.
I think that's great. I think that's
play a tournament against Liga MX and force all your players to grind it out.
The Spirit also are able to sort of. I noticed this. And this was in the Spirit showcase or Spirit. There's a new pod. I can't remember the podcast name of it right now, but it's the ESPN show version, Spirit Spotlight. They were talking about the what they wanted most in this game was the KC Current and Orlando Pride, who were playing each other, that someone would lose, so that it would like clearly break down where we are in the pecking order versus this weird sort of double dog first place team. Orlando wins, down a man, 2-1. Martha scores, and to some people's mind is unsportsman. I don't think that's the case. But now we know for sure we're third after that win against AFC. So it's all to play for. They're in a great spot. I think that the challenge is that so are those two teams above them. So it'll be really interesting to see how the rest of the season sort of plays out. And they're in a good spot. Like if you just look at this roster as constructed, there aren't a lot of holes that I want them to fill anymore. And we've still got players coming in. We have Esme Morgan coming in and Lacey Santos coming in, and they could not have expected that all 5 of those rookies were going to hit. And now you're like, well, we can't keep them off the field. What are we going to do?
I mean, look at how we came in. I mean, again, I always say, look how we came into this year. I don't think we were expecting this team to be where they were. We thought maybe they would suffer a little bit. That first game especially was like, oh, this might be a long, this might be bad. And then just the way they've kind of recovered from that, gone on this run. There's been stumbles that clearly show this team is not yet a complete picture. I think the Courage game shows that. You lose a player, you lose any player on the field, and you suffer that much. Some players do make a difference, but you lose a player. It's clear, like when Andy Sullivan's not out there, this team looks poor. And I think that's something that if I'm Geraldes, I have to figure out a way how to fix.
Gets another opportunity
because
I'll be interested to see what new coaching here if it changes anything for. But because there's not even on the rest of that bench, the unused subs for this game were Chloe Ricketts, who cannot get a game and really needs to go on loan. Lena Solano and Kate Wiesner. There's no answer there. There's no player sort of that is really ready to come in and play that spot. So that there isn't much to change, but I think that's really one of those spots. If you're going to hold on to Ashley Hatch as a compliment for Lesar, that's great. I think you're set there if that's the case. Center back Esme Morgan comes in, can play all positions, can also play fullback and defensive midfielder apparently. But I'd prefer to keep her as a starter in the back line. That's one other problem set. You got a goal scoring, chance creating winger coming in with Lacey Santos. If we can figure out a way in the salary cap situation and roster spot situation to bring in one more proven defensive midfielder, I think you're set. I think it's just a matter of then, you're just rolling the dice against the two big teams and seeing how it goes out because you're complete.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, these are Orlando playing very well, Current playing very well. I will say hats off, by the way, hats off to the NWSL. Finally, I know they're playing like a tournament. They're playing the little tournament. I think that's fine. Finally taking a break during the Olympics. Please keep this up. Take notes, MLS. Take notes on what you do in for international tournaments. Make your season shorter. Figure it out. You should not be playing during these times. So I think it's great. I think that for me is the biggest thing about this. I think it's going to lend more credence to the season. I think it's going to make the season more valid. And stop punishing teams too for signing good players. I think that also helped things. I feel like we always have this conversation every year about, oh man, I want a team to be good, but I just want to be just not good enough so we don't lose a bunch of players to international breaks. So I'm glad they get the break. We'll get to enjoy the women's national team. We'll get, some, a Leagues Cup type situation. They get to travel. They get to bring their brand to other markets. I think that's spurred on by the Super League, by the way, too. I think maybe the NWSL a little worried and they want to go to some of these markets and yeah, possibly. But yeah. So I mean, again, as far as the team goes, like I think you talked about it. The team looks, mostly with the players coming in. I think even maybe Esme Morgan's your answer. You can, Battelle and Mickey have not been poor. I mean, the team is still 16 games in the year, and their goal difference is they've given up 18 goals. So they're giving up about a goal a game. Maybe you like that to be a little bit lower, but I don't think it's within. It's certainly not when your team's as good as that offensively,
match up
that is good. That's good enough to win a lot of games.
So like a Courage, a couple other teams have sort of played them that way. It would be great to know that, a 1-0 result is very on the cards. And I think Morgan needs to start. I think one of Boutel and Mikio needs to rotate occasionally. I think if you're serious about it, if you're really, really committed full on this year to going for the cup, which maybe it should be as long as you don't have to mortgage your future, which doesn't seem they're going to have to with this many rookies on low salary deals. You should have some space in there. I would get another proven option at midfield, and then you are set, and it is on. Boutel.
Yeah. Who do you? Esme Morgan comes in. Who are you? I think we all, you think Boutel? Okay.
Brown.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we all know like Lacey Santos is coming in, filling in for Morris, filling in for Ashley Hatch, Brown. Those players very clearly like you just slot Lacey Santos right in there. That's pretty obvious. I was curious maybe who do you bench? Do you bench Boutel? Do you bench Mikione?
Lack of speed and recovery has resulted in goals. Tara Mikione has like a bizarre skill set for a center back, which is why it's cool that she has the range of passing that she has, and she has sort of her physicality that she used at her former number 9 lifestyle. But I think that having a proven, and not veteran, because she's still young. I think Esme's like 23 or 24 or 22. I think she's got more physical attributes that would suit. But having Boutel as a rotational option, similar to the Amber Brooks role last year, I think would be great. I think that's good. Only good for the team. Yep.
Let's we got a question. We do have a spirit-related question. Let's definitely get into that. From HB is the name.
Only rookie not to get a multi-year contract. Any info or ideas why this was? Could there be a contract offer this offseason? I think that she was injured coming into the year and she was rehabbing. So I think that's why she didn't get a multi-year deal. They gave a multi-year deal last year to I can't remember from Colorado, goal scorer, had multiple ACLs. Gonna have to help me out on her name. Not Nicole Douglas. Savannah Coleman. She got a multi-year deal on just with a real check.
Yeah, she's a young goalkeeper. She's a young goalkeeper too, 18 years old. That goalkeepers are different. It's a different mindset. I could see her. We got some of the friendlies coming up. I could see her getting some moments out there. I think the team, they're going to be missing. They aren't really missing. I guess they're missing. Shoot, I can't think of who they're. I'm trying to think who they're missing from the Nat. They're going to miss Gabby Carl. Obviously, they're going to miss. And John's back. Oh, he just wants you to pay attention to him. Croy did not make the team. No, so Croy will be here. They're gonna have mostly their full lineup. I don't think they're gonna be missing. They're gonna be missing too many players, if any. So I think they should have a. Could there be a traumatic injury and someone could get called up? Sure, but I think they're gonna have most of their players. So I think maybe you look at this as. Do you make a run? Do you want to keep the momentum going? It is a long time. You're going to be on break. Trinity Robin obviously won't be there, but the team has shown they can work around Trinity Robin and they can still be successful. So I think it's going to be fun. I'm excited for this. I think this tournament will be fun. I think it's good to see them go up to play these types of games, and we get to see them against international talent, against Chivas. So I think it'll be fun. Yeah. All right. Anything else we want to break down? Or I think we want to call it wraps. Yep. Again, patreon.com/RFK Refugees. If you want to join and support us, I promise you guys, look, it's been bad. And I don't think anyone blames me. Everybody's been very nice. Why aren't you breaking down a 5-0 loss to Orlando? I will be back on. I'm debating some columns, I think, as we enter the potential Leagues Cup break. I do want to do some articles on our new signings, particularly Baji. I might kind of split it up a little bit. Maybe I'm kind of waiting to see too who else we might sign. Maybe do a full on article. I think even just appearance at a friendly could be good. I promise you guys I'll be back to my writing. I know I've said that a lot. I promise you I will be back. Things are going to calm down a little bit. So again, but please, we appreciate the support. Thank you guys for joining us. Definitely John's been hitting the interview track. I'm sure he'll keep that up. So definitely you get some value out of that. And we appreciate you guys with the support. It definitely helps get our show going and keeps us motivated through these trying times with one team, but not with the other. So it's a nice little balancing act. All right, folks, that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for listening. Catch you guys next week. Vamos.